What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Eric, and this is Eric Bets Fights. Coming at you tonight with something brand new, folks. A brand new show called Mixed Martial Smarts, brought to you by Erik Bets Fights and Hedge Media. Mixed Martial Smarts is going to be a weekly UFC trivia video. Well, not weekly, but every week that UFCs are going on, which is pretty much every week lately for the next 10 weeks in a row or something like that. So every week, Erik Bets Fights and Hedge Media is going to bring you this video. It's going to consist of 5 trivia questions about fighters that are fighting on the upcoming UFC card. Of course, this week's card is UFC VEGAS 56, headlined by the heavyweight clash between Alexander Volkov and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I'm going to ask you 5 trivia questions about fighters that are fighting on that card. This first episode, obviously, I'm recording ahead of time and editing it and putting it out that way. In the future, we're probably going to end up doing this as a live stream so that you can actually, so people can actually come in and play along and type your answers in the chat as we go. But for this version, since we're just recording it ahead of time and posting it, if you've got guesses to the questions, go ahead and type them in the comments down below. I don't know. Maybe we'll send you a prize or something. We'll have to see. In the future, we'll probably get something like that going. I'm not sure about this first one, but we're just kind of getting it figured out for now. So if there's things you like about the way the format of this show is working, let us know in the comments. If there are things that you'd like to see different for the future, let us know that in the comments too. I mean, this show and all these shows, they're for you guys. They're for the viewers. So whatever you would like to see or would like to not see, just let us know. We're definitely willing to take any feedback into account. Let's go ahead and jump into this game, folks. Like I said, there will be 5 trivia questions. Some of them will be a little easier. Some of them will be a little more difficult. Some will have just one answer. Some will be looking for a bunch of answers, and we'll see how many you can figure out. Question number 1. Which fighter competing this weekend was on the receiving end of one of the worst beatdowns in recent memory in his UFC debut, suffering a second round that many fans and media members scored as a 10-7? Again, which fighter who's competing on UFC VEGAS 56 this weekend was on the receiving end of one of the worst beatdowns in recent memory in his UFC debut, suffering a second round that many fans and media members scored as a 10-7? If you've got a guess, go ahead and put it in the comments below. I'm going to go through all 5 questions, and then we'll come back and take a look at the answers. And if you need some time to come up with the answer, if it's right on the tip of your tongue but you can't think of it, just pause the video and give yourself a little time. All right, moving on to question number 2. If Karolina Kowalkiewicz loses to Felice Herrig on Saturday, she will become the first women's fighter in UFC history to lose 6 consecutive fights in the promotion. She currently shares the record of 5 consecutive losses with which bantamweight who retired in 2021 with a UFC record of 5-7-1? That question again. If Karolina Kowalkiewicz loses to Felice Herrig on Saturday, she will become the first women's fighter in UFC history to lose 6 consecutive fights in the promotion. She currently shares the record of 5 consecutive losses with which bantamweight who retired in 2021 with a UFC record of 5-7-1? And I'm going to say one thing about this question. I dug around a lot to try to make sure that there were no other women's fighters who had 5 in a row or who had 6 in a row. If you happen to know of one, go ahead and put it in the comments. There's a possibility that I missed one, but I did a lot of digging to try to make sure that there wasn't anybody else. But if I'm wrong, do let me know. Question number 3, we're looking at the main event here. UFC heavyweight Jairzinho Rozenstruik is the first fighter from what country to compete in the UFC? So we're looking for the country in which Jairzinho Rozenstruik was born. UFC heavyweight Jairzinho Rozenstruik is the first fighter from what country to compete in the UFC? I'm going to give you a couple hints here. Tyrone Spong and Melvin Manhoef were also born in this country. Neither of them fought in the UFC, though. But yeah, Tyrone Spong and Melvin Manhoef were also born in this country. And again, we're looking for the country that Jairzinho Rozenstruik comes from. All right, moving on to question number 4. Dan Ige has 3 first-round finishes in UFC competition, 2 by KO and 1 by submission. Which 3 UFC fighters did Ige finish in the first round? that question again. Dan Ige has 3 first-round finishes in UFC competition, 2 by KO and 1 by submission. Which 3 UFC fighters did Ige finish in the first round? All right, moving on to question number 5. This is a question where we are actually looking for 8 different answers. We want to see how many you can give us. At 6'7", heavyweight striker Alexander Volkov is the tallest fighter currently on the UFC roster. However, in the history of the promotion, 8 fighters who were billed as taller than Volkov have fought in the UFC's octagon. How many can you name? Again, Alexander Volkov, who stands 6'7", he is currently the tallest fighter on the UFC roster. However, in the promotion's history, there have been 8 fighters who were billed as taller. So there have been 8 fighters who were billed as 6'8" or taller. How many of those 8 fighters can you name? Let's see, I'm looking at the list here. Yeah, some of them are from quite a while ago. A couple of them are from the very early days. I'm giving you little hints as we go through here. A couple of them are from the very, very early days, like the first few UFC events. A couple of them were in the promotion. Well, one of them was in the promotion, pretty recently, in the last few years. The rest were, at least a good 10 to 15 years ago kind of thing, or, around there. But yeah, again, we're looking for the 8 fighters in UFC history who were taller than Alexander Volkov. And this is another one where, I did my homework digging to try to find all of the fighters that have fought in the UFC that were billed as taller than 6'7". This is another one where it's possible that I missed one. If you can think of another one, let me know. All right, gang, there's the 5 questions. Let's go over the answers and see how you did. Question number 1, which fighter competing this weekend was on the receiving end of one of the worst beatdowns in recent memory in his UFC debut, suffering a second round that many fans and media members scored as a 10-7? If you remember this fight, even the commentators were yelling for the ref to stop it. It was an absolute beatdown. That was Benoit Saint-Denis, Benoit Saint-Denis, I think is how they say it. That was his UFC debut was against Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos. Saint-Denis looked good. I mean, he looked good in round 1. Round 2 was just an absolute beatdown, but Saint-Denis was so tough. He never hit the ground. I mean, he was taking all these shots. He was out of it. He never hit the ground. He still came back throwing shots. He still fought for the rest of the fight. I mean, the guy he's a former French Special Forces soldier, and he's a very tough dude, and I am excited to check out his fight on this card. Question number 2. If Karolina Kowalkiewicz loses to Felice Herrig on Saturday, she will become the first women's fighter in UFC history to lose 6 consecutive fights in the promotion. She currently shares the record of 5 consecutive losses with which bantamweight who retired in 2021 with a UFC record of 5-7-1. That was none other than Marion Renault. Yeah, she retired with 5 consecutive losses in the UFC. Another interesting fact about her, when she retired, she was the oldest fighter on the UFC roster. Not the oldest fighter in history. Y'all know, while we're at it, y'all know who the oldest fighter to ever fight in the UFC's octagon was? It was Ron the Black Dragon Van Cleef. I believe he was 51 years old. I can't remember which card he fought on. It was one of the single digit cards. It was like UFC 3, 4, 5, somewhere in that range. But yeah, I was a big martial arts fan growing up, and I knew who Ron Van Cleef was before he fought in the UFC because he was always in martial arts magazines that I read as a kid and stuff. So I thought that was kind of cool when he fought. He did lose his fight. He fought Royce Gracie. He lost. That was his only UFC fight, if I remember correctly. But then he went on to become the commissioner of the IFL, which was not the International Fight League that came years later, but the IFL. I forget what it stands for, but that was almost like a governing body of some sort at that time. And Ron Van Cleef became the commissioner, if I remember correctly. Sorry, I keep saying if I remember correctly because all this stuff is just coming off the top of my head. I'm not looking it up, so I may be a little bit inaccurate, but thank you for bearing with me. Question number 3. UFC heavyweight Jairzinho Rozenstruik is the first fighter from what country to compete in the UFC? Tyrone Spong and Melvin Manhoef were also born in this country. That country is Suriname. Yeah, it's a small country in the north of South America. You can see the the flag there and a beautiful picture of what Suriname looks like. It's just north of Brazil there. It looks like it would be quite a nice place to visit. Question number 4. Dan Ige has 3 first-round finishes in UFC competition, 2 by KO and 1 by sub. Which 3 fighters did Ige finish in the first round? Those 3 were Mike Santiago, who he finished by ground and pound 50 seconds into round 1 at UFC 225 in 2018. Then he finished Danny Henry by rear naked choke at 117 of round 1. That was at UFC on ESPN Plus 5 in 2019. And Gavin Tucker knocked him out with a right cross 22 seconds into round 1. That was at the UFC Fight Night headlined by Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad in 2021. And finally, question number 5. At 6'7", heavyweight striker Alexander Volkov is the tallest fighter currently on the UFC roster. However, in the history of the promotion, 8 fighters who were billed as taller than Volkov have fought in the UFC's octagon. How many can you name? Let's go over them. Those fighters are standing 6 feet 8 inches tall. We have Paul Varlins, the polar bear, the Alaskan. Paul Varlins actually passed away recently. He died of COVID, unfortunately. He was a super nice guy. I was actually friends with him on Facebook. We used to shoot the shit a little bit here and there. Actually, years ago, we were talking about, he got a hold of me. I have a background in writing. I've done some publishing and editing work and that kind of thing. And he actually got a hold of me on Facebook and asked me about working on his memoir. He wanted to write an autobiography. And it was something that we had talked about. We'd gone back and forth and talked about starting on his memoir. And he said he had a surgery and he wanted to get started with it after the surgery. And then he had a surgery and we just never picked it up again. So that's a bummer. Anyway, Paul the Polar Bear Varlin, 6'8". Also standing 6'8", we've got Tim the Maniac Sylvia. So he would be the tallest UFC champion of all time. He was obviously the heavyweight champion at one time, quite a while back. We've got Dan Christensen. He was known as the Sandman. He fought on The Ultimate Fighter. Was it season 10? I think it was the first season that they had heavyweights anyway. He came in as an alternate. I think it was season 10. And then he did fight in the UFC. He fought Frank Mir. He might have fought one other time. I can't remember for sure, but he wasn't around for very long. And of course, we've got Emmanuel Yarbrough. He fought in UFC 3, I think it was. It was either 2 or 3. I think it was 3. He was the sumo wrestler who was 6'8". He was billed at 616 pounds when he fought in the UFC. Fun fact about Emmanuel Yarbrough. He was at one point in time recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's largest athlete. I know for sure he was over 700 pounds at one point. I think he might have even been over 800 pounds at one point. But yeah, he was the world's largest athlete. He actually did an appearance on Dave Letterman. And you know, he did some appearances here and there when that happened. He was a contestant. Now I'm trying to see. I don't plan these little asides here. This is just stuff that I'm coming up with on the top of my head. I feel like he was on a season of The Biggest Loser, but I might be wrong. You know who was on a season of The Biggest Loser? That was Rulon Gardner, who was a gold medalist in wrestling in the Olympics. He was the one who beat Alexander Karelin in the Olympics. He also fought in Pride. I think he only fought in Pride once, and you know, he had a lot of natural ability, being a big guy and a good wrestler, but he just ended up not really feeling like fighting was for him. He didn't like getting hit. He didn't like hitting people, that kind of thing. But yeah, Rulon Gardner. Anyway, little aside there. But yeah, Emmanuel Yarbrough, 6'8", 616 pounds. Coming in at 6'10", we've got Wes Sims. He was one of the early Hammerhouse guys, one of the early training partners of Mark Coleman. He was the one who fought Frank Mir in the UFC and stomped on his face. He literally grabbed the cage with both hands and stomped on Frank Mir's face. The ref disqualified him, and Wes Sims was so mad that he pulled his mouthpiece out and threw it and was yelling and stuff. It's like, dude, you just stomped on someone's face while holding the cage. You can't do that. Why are you mad about being disqualified? Anyway, yeah, Wes Sims. I think they called him the Project, if I'm not mistaken. Then Gan McGee, Gan the Giant McGee, 6'10". He did fight Tim Sylvia for the UFC heavyweight title. Here's a fun fact about Gan McGee. This is no longer true. At one point in time, he was the only professional mixed martial artist who was born in North Dakota. He was actually I lived in Fargo, North Dakota for 21 years, so that's kind of my home. But yeah, Gan McGee was from Bismarck, North Dakota. Next up, we've got Semi Schilt, standing 6'11". He was known as the Skyscraper. Obviously, he was a pretty accomplished kickboxer back in the day who did fight in the UFC a few times. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I believe he fought Pete Elduro Williams. If you remember Pete Williams was the guy who, the 22-year-old kid who kicked Mark Coleman in the face. That famous knockout where Mark Coleman gets kicked in the face with the dude wearing shoes. And yeah, that was Pete Williams. He was one of the early Lions Den guys, the Lions Den being Ken Shamrock's camp from way back in the day. And, Semi Shield. Did I say they called him Skyscraper? Isn't that what they call Stefan Struve? All right, now hold on. Maybe they called him both that. Now I gotta look it up and see. Semi Shield, what was his nickname? Were they both called Skyscraper? Oh, it just says. All right, hold on. I wasn't planning on you having to hang out while I do some Googling here, but I just want to see now if. I was almost thinking they called. Oh, Hightower. Hightower, that was it, not Skyscraper. Semi Shield was known as Hightower. He was 6'11". And then, of course, the tallest fighter in UFC history, Stefan the Skyscraper Struve. They did bill him at 7 feet tall at one point. For a long time, they billed him at 6'11", and then one day they just decided he was 7 feet tall. Yeah, you know how the UFC is with their heights and stuff. I don't know how that works. Like how Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's fighting on this card, he was billed at 6'4" when he first came into the UFC. Now he's billed at 6'2". If you look at pictures of him standing next to other heavyweights, it's pretty likely that he's not even 6'2". He's more like 6 feet tall, I think. He's not a very tall guy. Anyway, so yeah, they just decided Stefan Struve was 7 feet tall, and I'm guessing that's just because there's never been a 7-footer in the UFC, and they wanted to be able to say that there was. Another cool thing about Stefan Struve that just popped into my head, he did a photo shoot with Demetrius Johnson at one point in time. Demetrius Johnson is 5'3", I think. So he was at the time, this was before there were any women in the UFC. And so Demetrius Johnson was the shortest fighter in the UFC. So Struve and Demetrius Johnson did a photo shoot together, and it's kind of funny. I would recommend checking that out. Thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of Mixed Martial Smarts. Please give us a like and a comment here. Please give a subscription to Never Hedge Media if you want to check out more of my videos. Some of my stuff will be here on Never Hedge, but I'll still be releasing stuff on my own channel as well. Go ahead and hop on over to Erik Betts Fights on YouTube and give me a subscription if you wouldn't mind as well. And also, while you're at it, our other partner with Never Hedge Media is MMA Fight Club. Go ahead and check out MMA Fight Club. Give him a subscription as well. He does awesome work. He does not only UFC, he covers Invicta and KSW and LFA and a lot of the smaller promotions. He's doing some great work, putting out stuff just about every day, interviewing fighters and stuff, so make sure to check him out as well. Again, thank you so much for being here. I am Erik with Erik Betts Fights, and this was Mixed Martial Smarts. We'll see you next time, gang. Enjoy the fights this weekend.